and there are certain guidelines that we have to follow in order to be successful as far as not having government problems. There's always some government issues, but we want to keep them to a minimum, and therefore we must endeavor to follow certain guidelines that have been presented to us.
Has this technology been around for a while, and is it something that maybe nobody took off and actually implemented in the past, or is this something that's just brand new?
That's a good question, Steve. The history of this stuff dates way, way, way back, and I guess I'll tell a little story, a true story that a lot of people may or may not have trouble believing. But gravity motors is one particular type of free energy device that has been around for literally thousands of years. As you know, I've been ministering in 14 different countries in my life, and one of them, back about 10 years ago or so, was China. And I was invited to take a tour of one of the ancient temples, what they call the temple. And actually, when I was in there, I was pretty sure the lower parts of that temple were a scientific lab. I've been in enough labs. We've had enough labs. We've had over 30 labs since I started. And I immediately recognized several of the ancient trinkets that they had sitting on the tables and hanging around, that this was some sort of scientific lab. And one of the drawings on the wall represented a gravity motor. It was as clear as day as to me, because we built probably close to 1,000 gravity motors now, and not all of them have worked, but we've had 11 different models self-turning. But of those 11, the one on the wall looked a lot like one of the 11. I'll put it that way. And I immediately asked the tour guide, who spoke English, if what this represented on the wall, and she said it was an ancient depiction of the yin yang symbol.
Isn't that the symbol of balance?
Yeah, the symbol of balance, and that's of course what she explained. But it didn't look much like the yin yang symbol. It looked there was definitely parts, definitely you could see motion by the arrows, and there was writing there as well on that wall, right next on both sides of this big circle. The circle was about 4 or 5 feet in diameter.
Was the writing in English?
No, of course it was. I asked the lady what sort of writing it was, and she said it's ancient Chinese. This temple supposedly dated back 5,000 years, is what she said. And I asked her if anybody here could read it. There was about 6 or 8 people with us in the tour, and of course nobody could read it. But they don't know what it says. Basically, they said it's a lost language. That particular language, nobody knows exactly what it says. But I would guess that it was explaining that it's a gravity motor, and I have seen writing since then from the Chinese, even on the yin-yang symbol. I think the yin-yang symbol was relating to gravity motors, because it talks about balance and it talks about perpetual turning and so on in some of the writings with the yin-yang symbol. So I think even that was a short version of that motor, just like we draw a little arrow with a line for it for a diode. They had a circle with an S through it, basically, representing gravity motors, and it came to be a religious icon after a certain number of years and so on. But I think originally, I'm sure originally it referred to the gravity motor.
Were there others in history that had knowledge of this type of technology in the past that maybe never got to the market?
Yeah, I'm sure moving forward in time, I'm sure there's been many discoveries and rediscoveries of these type of technologies. It's easy to lose them because they're highly technical, and civilizations rise and fall. And so even though this technology has been here before, it's easy for it to, like I say, it's easy for it to get lost. If a big war happens, a big famine, a big sickness, even if, like in the Bible, you'd see different kings get mad and he'd line up all the wise men and have them executed. Well, the wise men were basically scientists. Some of them were magicians and practiced different types of magic. You could say Wiccans and so on and so forth. It probably would be an equivalent today. But the king would execute all the wise men. Of course, that when he gets mad at them, and for some reason, and of course that would really set back science and endeavor, and people wouldn't know how anything worked and so on, because all the guys that built those things are dead, and they'd execute the families as well. So even the children that might have learned a few things from their dad, they'd get executed as well. And so that really has a way of setting things back. Plus, one kingdom would take over another kingdom, and that would set things back. Plus, the kings themselves a lot of times wanted to keep the best stuff secret, and so they would make sure only a few people knew it. And then if those people wind up dying, that would set things back. But moving forward in time, about your question, basically other people that have discovered it and so on. I would say about 300 years ago was the first white man, the first person from our culture, and he was a German, and his name was Johann Bessler, and he traveled quite extensively and learned many trades, similar background to what most of our people, most of our scientists. To have a good scientist, you need to learn many trades. You need to travel extensively. It helps you get well-rounded and realize what the world's all about. Johann Bessler worked for 5 or 6 years to build a gravity motor and finally succeeded. But he was also a master clockmaker and a master organ maker and many other musical instruments. The organ was the most complicated machine they probably had at that time, and he was the maker of it. He was a master. He was also a medical doctor. And the man eventually figured out how to make a gravity motor, and he demonstrated it for most of his life, and finally wound up dying at 60-some years old. And basically the machine was lost to mankind because he never could sell it. He tried to sell it for many, many years and never really got a buyer. But that's the history of Johann Bessler. Then moving forward in time, we come to Keeley. Actually, just before Keeley, there was a few others. We had, of course, we had Michael Faraday quite a bit before Keeley. And he started basically the Renaissance in electricity, or he was considered the father of electromagnetism by many people. Before him, just before him, was Benjamin Franklin. But basically, the advanced technology started coming out again with about the time of Nathan Stubblefield, which a contemporary of Nathan's was the guy in France, which is, his name is D'Arsenval. I don't remember his first name, but D'Arsenval was in France, and he built a number of energy devices that would produce extra energy, electrical energy devices, quantum energy devices, if you want to call it that. And Nathan Stubblefield was doing the same thing here in America. He was from, he was either from Pennsylvania or Kentucky or both. I forget. But I know he lived for a while in Kentucky, and I believe he lived a while in Pennsylvania, so he was probably doing his work in both places. And he actually was the first one that I know of that ran houses, and including his own house, on quantum energy. And that was over 130 years ago.
Sounds like quite a history there, and a lot of your technology is built upon some of this knowledge that was gained and revisited from the past and brought forward in today's marketplace, and that's what you're trying to accomplish?
Amen. Yeah, God has always had a plan to get this stuff out, and he has called different ones to bring it into the world. But just like in history, the prophets, the people God calls, the prophets and the teachers, to bring things forth, they get treated badly, and they get persecuted, and they get killed. Jesus said, "Which of the prophets did your fathers not persecute?" And it's exactly true. It's 100% the case. There have been a huge amount of opposition to any good technology that might help mankind. And that's, again, the reason that men and women are being called everywhere. Everybody needs to get on the stick and start helping, because it's going to take a group effort. It's something that's going to help every single person, so every single person needs to help a little bit.